Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Ask NK. So today we're taking a look at Shotcut. Shotcut is a free open source cross-platform video editor. Now this tool is the closest thing that is to Resolve as a tool that is for free. And yes, we've covered a couple of tools on the channel that has to do with free video editors like the KDENLIVE and so on. But this tool has its own uniqueness. Now, a lot of things that you guys would definitely notice once you start working with this tool is the fact that the UI is extremely simplified, looks very professional and clean. And on the other hand, we are looking at the brand new version that is just available for anyone to go ahead and get. Now, a couple of features that you need to see is this tool supports ProRes 4K, FF, MPEG, and also the DNX HD. Now when it has to do with the audio, there is a whole list of features that you need to see that has to do with this tool, and the video effects are just so awesome. Now in most cases when you look at an open source tool, most of them don't really have things like the video scope, or maybe you might not be able to go ahead and make changes, make some very interesting changes that has to do with some channels or some filters. But this tool kind of gets everything together. Now the differences between this tool and Resolve is that Resolve is not open source. It is a tool that is for free, which means there are certain things that you need to sacrifice if you want to use it for extended display. But this tool just simply comes with all of the packets that you would need. So if you want to use it for an extended display, of course you can. Contrary to Resolve, that you need to buy an extra dongle for you to use it for an extended display. And adding to this, despite the fact that you can do all of that stuff, it still has a wonderful chroma keying tool that you can use. And if you're thinking of the interlacing your videos, or maybe you're trying to get some pretty cool text animation happening in your scene, it is codec independent, which means you can use it across the board, whether you're working on Mac, Windows, or even Linux. So without further ado, let's dive right into Shotcut and take a look at this amazing tool and see all of the glories that comes with it. Alright, so with Shotcut open here, once you download and install this tool, this is basically what you get. So if you download this tool, you can choose to download this as a zip file, which means all you need to do is double click and get this up and running, or you can download this as an installer, which means you have to install this to get this open. Either ways, once you open this tool, you can see how simplified the entire user interface is. I do have a very interesting thing for user interfaces as this simple, as you can easily get a couple of things running even without studying the whole or getting to learn the entire application over and over again. And this would give you so much time if you want to just get into the things you want to start making, contrary to spending time trying to learn where things are and how things work. So for this, we can choose a name. So I'm just going to call this Shotcut, for example. So let's call this Shotcut. And with this done, I would go ahead and hit the start. Now, if you want to have your video modes, you can choose them from here. So this is where you can specify the frame type that you want. So if you're going with a 1080 or you're trying to go with a 2160, you can choose to do that. But if you want this to just be automatic, it's just going to go ahead and set these as automatic. Then for these, you will be having 1920 by 1080, which would run at 25 frames per second. So depending on what you want to do, you can proceed to make those changes here. And for us, we're just going to go ahead and keep this at 1080 HD, and with that done, you go ahead and hit the start button. So once you hit the start button, this simply loads up, and this is exactly how you find it. Your bean stays here. This part is where you find your filters, and filters has to do with all of the effects that you want to throw into your scene and every other thing that you want to play with. At the same time, this is where your timeline is. This is your source, this is your project, and you now notice that you have a very tick bar right here that specifies every single process and every single thing that you want to do. We're going to get into these things a bit, but before we actually get into them, it's worth saying that you need to get in some footages before you proceed with that. And it means you need to get some footages before you proceed with this. And for this, I'll go ahead and import some clips. And one of the very interesting ways of bringing clips into your scene is by clicking, dragging them, and dragging them over to your bin. So once you click and drag them here, just going to go ahead and stop that. It automatically previews, so you'll be able to see this. And once you press the spacebar button, you can pause this. Once you press the spacebar button one more time, you can play it back and get it up and running. So with this now, you'd now notice that we have this here. We have the source monitor, and then we have this right here. Now what this means is we are looking at this clip, and this clip is active for any filter that you want to throw into this. Now, if you also want to drag in some more clips, you can also choose to do that. And for this one, I would go ahead and get some pretty cool clips from Axis. Right, so from Axis Anima, we're going to go ahead and drag in some of these, and you can see automatically it plays back. I'm just also going to go ahead and pause this. Now, one of the things which I think you guys need to know is if you do have a GPU, this would utilize the GPU for several things, both for playback and for, you know, rendering. It is definitely going to utilize the GPU. Now, if you go over to the file, you notice there's no import, because importing simply means you need to drag and drop. When you go over to the edits, it's just very basic stuff that you need. You also notice that right here, we have exactly the same things that we have here, right here. Now, this makes a lot of sense because at certain points, you would want to just simply not go through this part, but, you know, get your job done from here. The layout is very, very nice, as you can go ahead and play with the layout depending on what you want to do. So if you want to get a clip only project, you're going to be able to change the layout to just see just the clips. If you also want to change the layouts to be for like just your basic timeline stuff, you can also choose to do that. And this is just, you know, the very basic layout that you have. Of course, you might want to make some additional layouts and add them from here. But with that said, you can also change and see different scopes directly from this part. Now, where you get to see the scopes is right here. So if I simply move around, you will notice we have a certain, you know, number of dots right here. And if I click and drag, you can now see that we can actually see the audio meter. And if you want to see more, or, you know, if you want to see more scopes or you want to see more meters, you can choose to view them from here. So I can go ahead and click the video RGB waveform. So I'll be able to see the waveform. And this will be pretty interesting if you're trying to do your color grading, and this would give you a whole lot of, you know, information depending on what clip that you have directly there. And talking about things that you have, or, you know, talking about things that would give you some very good accessibility while you're trying to work, if you look very close, so let's go ahead and do that here, you will notice that we have two different buttons. All right, so these buttons are either for you to take things out or for you to close that window. So if you want to undock or dock a window, so if I simply click here, you can see I have undocked this window. If I want to dock that window now, I can just simply move it over to a point, it snaps, and we get that window right there. The same thing happens, I can undock that and click on the close button to get rid of that. Now, if you're working with a multi-display, this is very interesting, as if you go back to your settings and you scroll all the way down, you can choose to send your stuff over to a different screen. You can choose to work with an external monitor. So right now, if I go over to settings, go over to external monitor, I can switch this between the two monitors that I have powered on right now. So if you have about 3, 4, 5 different monitors, in our case, we do have about 3, you can simply switch these over to the 3, but right now we only have 2 powered on, and that's why we can only see these 2. So another thing to also see while you're looking at this, you know, interesting tool itself, is while you go all the way and try to look at the interpolation, you see the types of interpolation that it has. When you also go over to the deinterlacer, you'll notice the type of the interlacer. The viewing method or the display method actually varies. So if you want to make use of the software, DirectX, OpenGL, if you want to just simply set this to automatic, these are totally fine, as you can choose either of them and get working with them. So with this said, let's take a look at how you can edit your own clips directly in Shotcut. And for this, we're going to go ahead and create a little timeline. So for you to make timeline, you need to, you know, raise this all the way up. Click right here, and you can now add a video track and also an audio track. All right, so we add an audio track and a video track, and you can add as much as you want. To me, I think this is, you know, very interesting, and it's going to save a lot of space, especially if you have a small screen, or if you just want to have so many things at the same time, but you don't want to sacrifice space for certain things, then it's going to make a lot of sense. So owing to the fact that you can dock, undock, and you can simply, you know, add as much stuff as you want, and at the same time, you can choose to right click and go down here and click on make track shorter, which is going to make the track a bit shorter, and all of those beautiful things. So how do you put these clips here? So if you want to get your clips and you want to drag them right here, the same way which you do in Premiere, Resolve, from your source monitor, you can simply drag and drop them right here and create an insertion. All right, now with this here, whenever you want to cut a clip, if you simply right click, you can split that clip around where you want it to be. Very similar to what you have in Camtasia, as well as once you go over to that part, once you press S on your keyboard, you can just simply split that clip in 2. So if I simply go ahead and make a selection for a clip like this and press S on the keyboard, I can split this clip into 2. move this clip over to a point. Let's go ahead and get the gravity rope demo. And for those who don't know what gravity rope is, it is a plugin that you can use for Blender. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click. Let's stop that, click and drag, drop this right there. And if we want to also make some insertions, we can choose to push this, and you can see we can start having some insertions that can cause some sort of cross dissolve. So once we go ahead and press the playback button, you can see that nice dissolve as it just travels through, blends in, and we can get the next clip happening. Alright, so with this, if you don't want to press S on your keyboard to get this going, you don't want to right click to get this going, you can still use, you can still use this button right here and split directly within the playhead to get that off. If you also want to mute a particular track, you can simply, right click and do a very basic detach. And of course, if you have a clip that does have, a track built into it, like this one, for example, if I go ahead and select this, right click, I can switch down here and detach the audio. All right. So once you detach the audio, you can have the audio down here and you can proceed to mute that audio, or, you can move this audio over to the next place where you want these things to be. You can also proceed to selecting this. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this right now. I can also choose to right click right here and detach this audio. So this way you can easily, manage the audio that is coming from the video, and at the same time you can simply choose to play with this thing however you want. And if you want to do a very simple ripple delete, you can simply get that one going by selecting the clip right here and clicking on this button, and you'll be able to do a very cool ripple delete. And so with this in mind, the next thing which we would like to look at is how you can add some sort of transitions and all of those beautiful things. So for this, I'm just going to press the pause button just to stop that. I'm just going to go ahead and press the space bar just to stop that. And before we actually talk about that, you can use either of these grids to actually align and get some things to be exactly at the center. So this is a very useful tool to see that it exists in a software that is open source and very interesting to work with. And with that, once we go over to a particular part, so let's say I select an object like this and I want to get a transition to happen. So once I go ahead and click right here, let's say we select the clip, I can go over to the filters, click, and then I can type in the type of transform I want. So for example, if we go ahead and do a very simple fade, we can choose to fade audio, video, fade in, fade out, depending on what we want. So if I go ahead and say I want to fade in a video, I can click right there, and once we press the playback button, you can notice we have that very beautiful fade in happening there. Of course, we've already talked about how you can get the cross dissolve. So for that, you can simply select the clip and just nudge that clip just a little bit, and you can start getting that cool cross dissolve that you want. And from there, you can press the playback button to get that one happening. And let's say we take a case like this, and let's nudge this just a little bit into the other clip, and let's press the playback button right now. And you can also see that you can have that very smooth, clean transition happening. All right. So other things that you can also choose to play with is this. So if I go over to this particular clip which we have here, let's go ahead and take off the grid, so we don't want this, and I click over to this part. We can either choose from video, audio, and we can work with that. And for this, let's say I want to get some color grading happening. All right, so I can just simply type the word color, and once we go ahead and type the word color, we see different kinds of colors right here. So if I select the color grading, and you notice that we have for sure 3 different panels, and you notice that we have the color grading panel that appears. Now within the color grading panel, we can choose to play with the midtones, we can choose to play with the highlights. So for example, let's say we just want to get some highlights like that, and if we want to drop the shadow over to a point like this, we can of course make something like that happen. So maybe something like that. So if you turn this off and turn it back on, you can see what we have before and after. And this is very interesting because you can also choose to animate this if you want. If we want to animate this across the entire stuff, we can choose to do that. And for you to actually see your keyframe while you animate, you might need to go over to keyframe. All right, so you can click on keyframe right here, or you can go over to view and click on keyframe. And once you do that, you would notice we have a tiny keyframe right here. Now this is interesting because we can drag this out. Let's go ahead and undock that, and we can undock this, and right here we can dock this directly above this. All right, so now that we have this right there, so I'm just going to raise that up, and now we have the keyframe bar right on top of this part. Now whatever keyframe that we're doing, we can easily see, and you now notice we have a huge panel right here. We have our our project, our monitor right here. We have our bin, we have our timeline, a very clean keyframeable window, and a very clean keyframe window right here. So whatever that we're keyframing, we can actually take a look at that from here and have fun playing with it. And to get started with keyframing, you need to actually turn on the clock. So all of this clocks needs to be turned on. And if I move over to a point like this and I want to make some changes, I can start making that adjustment. This is a little bit too harsh, so we can make some adjustments like this, maybe just a bit like that, and maybe change this to, let's go with something like this, slightly this way, and maybe we can get something like that. All right, so once we do any of those changes, you would notice automatically that we have a keyframe that is tied to that. And of course, if you want to see the keyframe, you need to bring this all the way down, and you would notice that you have these keys right here. Now these keys that you have right here, if you go ahead and select them, you can choose to change their interpolation type from smooth, linear, and discrete. You can also choose to delete them if you want. So right here, I can go back and press the playback button, and you can notice that in real time, we are getting our very cool update. Adding text and some effects is just slightly different. So for that, let's go ahead and add the brand new video track. So you can choose to add the brand new video track. You can also choose to right click and just simply insert the track if you want. And with this done, the next thing which we want to do is to simply click right here, and you can notice there's a tiny node here. Just click down, and then you can add either color, which has to do with a solid that you might want to throw in. So in case you're trying to get some solid, you can choose to do that. So if we select, red, for example, and now you notice we have a solid. So you can simply drag this directly from the source window into the timeline. So this is exactly how you get this one there, and the same thing applies for every other thing. So adding text is also the same process. So you need to go over to the open others, and then you can proceed to adding text. So once you click right there, you can notice the background is transparent. Whatever you do, if you don't want to have a background color, then of course leave this the way it is. Then from here, we'll go ahead and type the word anima, and with that done, I'm going to go through and click on OK. You notice it's playing back. You can proceed to stop that. If you want to use the exact font size, you can switch this to get the exact font size. And if you want to play around setting stuff, you can also choose to do that. Now, if you want to insert setting fields to this, which is actually where it comes in pretty nice, you can choose to insert setting operators to this thing, and it's going to really give you some pretty cool animation. So for example, if we go through and insert the frame hash, you'd notice to every frame that this runs through, it is going to calculate and actually render the frame numbering as it travels through. So you can go ahead and press the playback button to get this one going. And if you don't want to have that tiny code there, you can proceed to get rid of that. If you want to see your normal time code, you can also throw in the normal time code. And in most cases, when you're working with some apps, you might need to go in and type some codes to get this thing running, but by default this is directly here in Shotcut, and it is indeed a shortcut for you to actually get some things happening. So once you have the text that you're looking for right there, you can proceed to drag directly from the source window and drop it on your timeline. So I can go ahead and just simply drop that right there, and once we hover around, you can notice we have the text right there. Now there are certain things that you need to also keep in mind, and they are that if you proceed to make a text and you just simply don't drag them in, and for some reason you just click out, you might have to type or go through the whole process again of typing this. And this is just one downside for me, and of course this is just totally up to you and how you want to work with this tool. You can still use this, which has to do with the transform tool, to transform this object wherever you want it to be. And in this case, once you go ahead and make these changes, so for example we change this to that point and we want to move this around, we can simply use this point right here, this tiny point right here, and you can move this around. You can still throw in several animations on top of this, if this is also something you're going for, as once you press the plus button, you can also proceed to type whatever thing that you want. So in our case, we can go ahead and type the word blur, for example, and with blur right here, we can choose to use Gaussian blur to just simply blur this out and create some animation happening with this. And for that, we can go through the entire route of going right here. So let's actually constrain this to only where we have anima. So right to a point like this. All right, so right to a point like that, we can simply use the blur tool right now to actually get some pretty cool stuff happening. So let's reset this, set this all the way to 0, and I kind of like keyframing backwards, so I'm just going to set the proper key that I want at the given point, and then I'll go all the way to the back, which is about a point like that. And I'm also going to go ahead and increase the blur. So once we go through and press the playback animation, you would notice we have that blur popping in. So you can see that right there. So let's simply go back and press the playback button so that you can see this. And for this, you can also switch this. So in case you want to see, you want some things to work based off hierarchy, you can also proceed to switch these things, and you're going to get some pretty decent results as you work with this tool. All right, so that is basically about it. If you want to proceed to exporting these, if you want to play with several tools that you want from here, you have all of the things, and most of the basic things, not really basic, most of the basic and close to advanced things that you want to work with. If you want to also proceed to do some chroma keying, you can also, proceed to do those chroma keys, and you can see the kind of result that you will be getting from a tool like this. So tell me what you guys think about all of the things that we've talked about that has to do with Shotcut as a software. And if you're considering exporting your shots, you can see a huge set of presets and a huge set of things that you can export your stuff, as this tool actually have you covered and would get you from point A to point B at every single time once you want to do your video editing. So if you're trying to get into video editing and you don't want a complicated app, or you just don't have the subscription money for Adobe, and maybe you're just trying to find a tool that has a fusion of both what you can get from DaVinci and also Premiere Pro, then Shotcut is a very good tool that you should take a look at. Now tell me what you guys think about all of these beautiful things that we've talked about in the comment section. And if you want to download this, link is going to be in the description where you can proceed to download this. And if you want to take a look at some other open source tools that we've covered in the channel that has to do with both KDENLIVE and also Olive, there is going to be a link in the description that will take you to those videos, and you would find them rewarding. So I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.